one of the things that I've been trying to figure out for myself and for the other folks that I talk to is the relation to the time period, right? This is an indefinite event, right? I mean, you hit something about the elections coming up, right? But there's the aspect of doom scrolling. They talk about doom scrolling, and everybody is just so tied in, and they've got anxiety because of elections. They get anxiety because of COVID. They get anxiety because of other things, right? It's the unknown. But you're also subjecting yourself to this barrage of every minute. And I would argue to say that a lot of the reasons why stuff succeeded after the Great Depression is because people weren't confronted by the Great Depression every minute of the day, because they weren't walking around with their iPhones reading the blasting headlines that say how messed up the world is all the time. They put their head down, they went to work, and then every week they might read a newspaper or something like that, right? And so there's space. But back to the timeline. So how do you deal with something that doesn't seem to have an end, right? And I quote Viktor Frankl a lot, right? An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. But the other thing that Frankl does, and what he said, is, and I'll mess up the quote, but, he who has a why can endure almost any how, right? Which I think is attributed to both Frankl and I think Nietzsche. But one of the aspects with that is, how did, if you read Man's Search for Meaning, how did Victor get through 4 concentration camps, right? Part of it was what he talked about with purpose and meaning, but the other part of it was he had to believe that this wasn't permanent, right? And that's a mindset, right? You have to force yourself to believe that it's not permanent. How did I deal with early recovery? There was a lot of days that it was what I call chasing midnight, right? If I can make it to midnight, it's tomorrow. I made it through today. I got my one day, right? Like 4 or 5 days after rehab, I was on a flight to Hawaii, like 11 hours on a plane, and I hadn't been sober on a plane for like 15 years. And it literally was like every 10 minutes, all right, man, I can do another 10 minutes, right? Because I know the plane's going to land eventually, right? So I had this time limit, and what I've found for myself is I shifted from chasing midnight to now I run my clock to 9 o'clock in the evenings, right? So 9 p.m. is when I take meds. So, I take my lithium, lamotrigine, I take my doxylamine. So, I take magnesium, I take some melatonin and things like that. So at 9 o'clock is when I take meds. And so my effort for protecting myself from the day and the day's stressors and everything else ends at 9 o'clock, because after that is when I give my brain time to just take off. So I'm either playing a video game or I'm watching something after that and just letting the machine decouple. So I went from midnight to 9 o'clock, but one of the things that I've found for me, and that I've also suggested for other people, is to adapt something like that, right? I don't have to make it forever. I don't have to make it to what Dr. Fauci says we're going to be in this until like 2022 or some crap like that, right? I don't have to make it to 2022. I don't have to make it till tomorrow. I just have to make it till tonight. And I can do my life in a bite-sized chunk because that's manageable. Now, if I'm trying to do my life in a 6-month projection and try to figure out, am I going to school next year? Am I doing something else like that, right? How am I going to be sober 3 months from now? I don't know. How am I going to be sober tomorrow? I don't know. You know what? I'll figure that when I wake up. And part of that is I'm putting tools in place to help me when I wake up, right? But I only have to be sober right now, and I only have to be sane right now, and that's going to last till 9 o'clock tonight, and then I'm good. And that's just the way that I roll, man.